And I've spent a lot of time over the years really examining Link's personality because at a glance, it seems like he's just a blank slate protagonist. But he isn't. He has a personality of an extremely well-developed one.
I'm not sure I've met anyone who loves and understands the Legend of Zelda series better than Rebecca Tripp. She's a prolific composer and remixer who's recently decided to turn her talents towards a new medium, audio dramas. With her new project, Lamp of Destiny, well underway, we decided now would be a great time to catch up with Rebecca and learn about how and why she tells her stories. This is Bryan, and thanks for joining us for an evening at the Roost.
Lamp of Destiny is a Legend of Zelda inspired audio drama. It loosely follows the plot of various Zelda games. It's kind of like my dream Zelda game that was never made. Don't get me wrong, I love the new Zeldas, I love Skyward Sword, I love Breath of the Wild, but I really wanted to experience an older Zelda game again, with some of the newer bits of lore kind of reworked in. And I had this vision in my mind of this version of the story that kind of combined some of the older elements and some of the newer ones. And at some point, I became aware of this. Well, I guess I hadn't thought about audio drama until a couple of years ago, and then I realized I could totally do that. I know a bunch of voice actors. You guys were doing stuff like this, and that actually partly is what inspired me. And I also had all this music that I wanted to do something with, and I realized this was a good way to use it.
You mentioned that you felt older Zelda games were kind of different from newer ones. Like, what were the differences that you were trying to capture with this?
Some of the other games, like Link to the Past, is probably the pinnacle of an example. They had a fairy tale quality. It's still there, but it doesn't quite feel the same anymore. It's been sort of replaced. And I don't mind that. I like the new version just as much. Like the newer Zeldas, they're much more Asian-inspired, more of sort of like a Shinto feeling. I love that. The older ones felt more like European myth, you know. It's very clearly Robin Hood, King Arthur, and Peter Pan, and all those stories I grew up with. And while they're still there, because the series has been going on so long, it's slowly been evolving into something else.
Do you think that a lot of that feeling was about the structure of a fairy tale and how well that meshes with a video game? You know, find the 4 sages, break the 7 seals, and a lot of the ritual that goes along with those stories very neatly fits into the objectives of a game.
Yes, but that part of it hasn't been lost at all. If anything, that part has sort of been verified. I think it's more, if anything, Zelda has found its identity over the ages, and some of that is sort of for better or worse, because originally it was much more of a pastiche of different fantasy tropes, kind of like Final Fantasy is. Now it's very much its own thing. It's been sitting in its own glory for so long.
You could pretty much make an entire Zelda game out of existing Zelda tropes at this point. Like, it has so many of its own story points and its own characters and its own, like, of course a Zelda game is going to do this and this, and by the time you're done with everything a Zelda game would do, you kind of have a full game.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's something that reading the script and hearing the episodes for Lamp of Destiny, which, by the way, is still in progress, I'm always like, I can't place my finger on it, but this is a very Zelda-ish thing to be happening. Like, did this happen before, or it was my imagination filling in the gaps right now? It's a really uncanny feeling.
That's what I wanted. I wanted it to feel like platonic Zelda. So every event, every character, every object has a kind of archetypal quality. Like, it's just one of the many ways that the kaleidoscope could have churned. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And yeah, Stephen nailed it. When I'm reading it, I'm like, when I'm reading the scripts, I feel like I am reading just what completely could have been a Zelda game, but just isn't, is just
The
its
lost,
own thing.
forgotten
Exactly.
Zelda
It's like, was this on the Game Boy or something? It was one of those I didn't play. Or...
It's like that day when Miyamoto was wandering into the garden, he went to the Lost Woods, got lost. The script is gone to the ages and the
I
sages.
think that'd be fun to jump into. Is Rebecca, what is your history with Legend of Zelda? Like, you've been a fan for quite a while, right?
Nah, she doesn't really like it very much.
I started with Links to the Past and Link's Awakening pretty much in tandem. So I was a 90s kid. I guess you guys were too. Sorry.
Same. Yep.
And at the time, when I was little, our parents were always giving us mythology and fairy tales as bedtime stories. And I already mentioned Peter Pan, Robin Hood, and King Arthur were three of the ones that my brother and I were really into. And we spent a lot of time in the forest pretending to be those characters. And we were raised with all the stories of like Celtic myth and the fairy queen and all these ideas. And then my brother one day brings home Link to the Past, and all these things are in it. And it was instant love. I became obsessed with that game overnight. I never ever wanted to stop. It was just too good, too stimulating. It's like I was entering the realm of myth, which is, I guess, what I wanted.
I'm trying to recall our own childhood. And where do you think the Legend of Zelda fit into our? Because we have a pretty deep appreciation of myth and sort of archetype. But I feel like our introduction to that was through Star Wars.
Yeah.
Which was before we played Zelda.
Ooh,
it took us a while to warm to the Legend of Zelda. I think Wind Waker was the first one we really appreciated fully.
And that's because it was a little lighter. It was a little more like the kind of stuff. Yeah, Nintendo stuff. We weren't huge into like more, I don't know what darker or more mythic fantasy like Ocarina of Time and that sort of thing until later. But yeah, that idea of it basically being the Legend of Zelda very much does feel to me like the fairy tale of games. Like if there is a fairy tale series, a continuing archetypical canon in video games, it's hard to I could say Final Fantasy, except it like completely changes what it is every game, so I can't quite keep track of it. But
the Legend of Zelda literally mythologizes hardware. Like in Ocarina of Time, you get the Rumble Pack, or also known as the Stone of Agony,
right? And the Sheikah Slate.
And yeah, you're right.
Which is basically a Switch.
Yeah.
It's a version of immersion for sure. I didn't mean to rhyme there.
That's good.
Think a good song. Version of immersion.
Yep. I like that. Yeah.
I have Breath of the Wild on the Wii U. And I guess the Switch is kind of like that too, actually. It's a tablet. So you use the tablet for your tablet.
Yeah, and I'm trying to think, like, do you think there's something special about Zelda in particular that captures a tone that, like, isn't really in other games? Or do you think there's a lot of other stuff like Legend of Zelda?
Yes and yes.
Okay.
I think that Legend of Zelda is top tier of top tier of top tier representation of the hero myth. I haven't seen anything that does better. I've seen things that do as good, though. So, but not many. So that's the thing.
Kind of like I briefly mentioned before, at least to me, one reason that fits so well is because Nintendo as a designer designs through gameplay ideas first. As Bryan and I, we often talk about their philosophy, and it's usually design first, aesthetic later. And I feel like when it comes to a fairy tale, the design and the aesthetic go hand in hand, and Nintendo never shies away from that, and they are able to tap it as something very powerful.
It's all about balance. All about balance. Miyamoto used to give lectures to his employees about the importance of balance and proportion, and he would give metaphorical examples of different art forms, and if he felt that the balance wasn't respected, he would get very angry and make them start over. So he still cares so much about it, and I think it really shows that there isn't one Zelda game that lacks this balance. Some other long-standing franchises have sort of migrated away from it, but at the heart of the Zelda series is this sense of proportion and pacing and essence. Every little bit of space feels meaningful, and every object feels like it belongs in the world. But there are some, especially in the newer games, there are some examples of times where it does deviate.
Mm-hmm.
There are characters that have total tonal dissonance with the rest of it. Mm-hmm. That annoys me, to be honest. But for the most part, everything feels like it belongs in the fabric of the world it's in.
Yeah, that's extremely well put. I think balance is something that we often look for in games, and we didn't know we were looking for it until recently when we really started to decide to sort of dissect the games we like so much.
Yes.
And it's amazing to me that like so many Zelda games have come out at this point, but it doesn't feel like they're being sloppily put together or that they're redundant. Like each one feels special in some way.
Yeah,
each one has a vision and a reason to exist, which makes me want to ask Rebecca, when you're making Lamp of Destiny, how do you strike the balance in a completely different medium?
I have to think about that because it's such an automatic thing for me. I'm already a writer, so that probably helps.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And of course the music thing, so like audio is my primary medium. So I've spent a lot of time, I've had a lot of practice arranging sounds in a way that feels like it has an arc. Like we talked about the medleys before, it's not actually that different. There's a sense of a journey with music.
That's true.
So that helps. But then the experience with writing, just thinking about it in terms of imagining it as though it's a song, how it would play out, how each section would lead into the next. The same thing is done with the gameplay in the Zelda games. I think you guys understand because we're all creative types here.
Mm-hmm.
Every art form is like the others.
Yes.
That sense of flow, whether it's a painting or it doesn't matter. If you can experience this flow, if you can sense this flow, that's how you make it work.
Yep, the pacing, the tension and the release, the beginning, middle, and end, all those things that, like you said, often we've been so conditioned by all of the stories we've read and that we've absorbed that we're actually putting all of those things into our stories without realizing it often. So
definitely.
Yeah. So what did you find like working on an audio drama? Did it feel very different to you from other writing you've done, or was it pretty similar?
I was surprised by how similar it was. Yeah. It was just, okay, it's more of the same of everything else I do. You know?
Yeah.
I guess you guys relate to that, right? Like when you try a new art form, it's like you can get a sunflower and a rose and a cherry blossom, and then at some level you realize they're all flowers. You can feel the floweriness of them, but they look nothing alike.
But one of the things that is a departure from the rest of Zelda in Lamp of Destiny, well, the rest of Zelda that Polite Company talks about, is that Link is fully voice acted. Link.
Oh boy.
Which I'm sure for many people is like, well, I'm never going to listen to that now. Nope, just not going down that road. But I mean, first off, I just have to say the voice actor you found for Link is phenomenal.
Beyond perfect.
Yes.
I think he's just actually Link reincarnated.
It's insane. Like, anyone, go pause this and go listen to one of the Lamp of Destiny episodes. Because that, to me, that's the canon Link voice. Like, he should start with Charles Martinet, sign up at Nintendo and be like, all right, guys, I can do the Link voice now.
And he's still young. He could do this for years and years.
But, like, was that at all a stumbling block for you when you started this, being like, how in the world am I going to find a voice for Link? And is that just not a good idea?
You know, I thought about it a lot because, obviously, Link wouldn't be a talkative guy, even if it was real life. Because, obviously, if it was real life, he would talk like everybody. But he would still be a quiet type.
Right.
And I've spent a lot of time over the years really examining Link's personality because at a glance it seems like he's just a blank slate protagonist. Mm-hmm. But he isn't. He has a personality, of an extremely well developed one. And I've I actually talk about that a bit in my psychology and philosophy videos about the Zelda series.
Yeah,
and
I remember that.
It's all about teasing that personality out. So with all the characters, I did a lot of kind of workshopping. What would be natural for them to say and what would not. And for Link, he talks a lot in this series because he sort of has to otherwise you don't know what's going on. But I tried to balance it out, first of all, by always having people with him.
Yes.
So the lamp mechanic itself, the main mechanic of the game, so to speak, is vocal. It's noise, right? So there's always people talking to him through that, and then he usually has sidekicks. He'll continue to have sidekicks, so that helps. But every time he talks, it's almost always because he's out of his depth. I want to kind of get the impression that he wouldn't normally be so talkative, but all the things that are happening to him are just so bizarre.
Mm-hmm.
So it's forcing him out of his shell.
Of his depth.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's thinking back to it is easy to assume that Link is the blank slate character model that you put yourself into, and to an extent that's true. But then when I think back, would Link do this? Would Link not do that? I have some opinions about that. You even if it's in your own head, he sort of develops his own personality, and I feel like Link in Lamp of Destiny is just embodying all of the Links. He's not any one particular Link. He just sort of is another one in the lineage.
That's exactly what I wanted. I want him to feel like a kind of synthesis, that he's got some Link to the Past, he's got some Ocarina of Time, Majora, he's got some Twilight Princess, some Skyward Sword, some Wind Waker, etc. And they all feel true and they all feel untrue.
Yeah. And the real question about Link's personality, would or would he not hit a chicken with a sword?
Not on purpose. I think it's accidental most of the time.
I was going to say that,
all
yeah.
Right.
But we're softies in this.
In this version of Link. Yeah, no, I agree with that. However, he would absolutely purposefully destroy pots. That's...
He's got to let off the steam somehow.
Exactly. He needs that. The balance. You need that balance. So, yeah. Well, I just can't say enough about that Link voice actor though. That was that the first voice actor you got, or did he come later?
Actually, he was. That's the funny thing. I did hear a couple auditions before his, but he was the first person to express interest. And
that must have given you a huge confidence boost for the project in general. I know that when I'm working on audio dramas and I get the first actor or two in and they're really good, there's this feeling of, okay, this is going to work. We can do this.
Yeah.
People like this exist.
Oh, there's some great actors coming you haven't heard yet, too. The guy who does the Goron voices.
Nice.
I've been looking forward to that.
Yeah, next episode you'll finally get to hear him.
Cool.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Hey, I did a voice too. It was really good. I got to be one of 3 ghosts.
Yeah, so I guess we should set up where it is right now. We just... The 4th episode was just released, and that was a Link going to the Forest Temple, which is basically the first dungeon. And I actually don't know how many episodes are there going to be total. I
don't know the exact number because as I'm writing them, sometimes inspiration will hit and I'll add more than I intend to, and it will go on longer. Right. But I'm aiming for something between 16 and 20.
Gotcha. Oh my god! So this is quite an undertaking.
It's a huge project.
I'll keep working on it as long as people are willing to work with me.
I know that feeling.
Yeah.
Yes, until Nintendo snatches up the Link voice actor and makes him sign a contract, you're good to go.
It's bound to happen.
Yeah. So speaking of the workload, though, a lot of that for you is making the music, because you compose... It's a mostly original soundtrack, right?
I'd say about And if we exclude the credits, which are very long musical segments, right? Then, and those weren't done by me anyway, but probably about 50% of the music is original, and 50% is either indirectly a reference to songs from the game or just sort of a cover of songs from the games.
Right.
And the boss battles are all going to be from the series, and each one will be a different guest composer.
Oh, that's cool.
Oh, cool. Wait, who did the Forest Temple?
That was the Noble Demon.
Oh, neat.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I listened to it and I thought maybe it was Sam Dillard because it had it somewhere.
Oh yeah.
File.
Well, he did the credits. He does all the credits ones.
Nice.
Oh yeah, Sam's amazing.
He is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the boss music was awesome as well. So obviously, this is not your first rodeo with composing Zelda music.
Yeah.
But we already asked what makes Zelda special as a series. What do you think makes Zelda music special?
It's it has a very unique way of making the listener feel safe and grounded while simultaneously immersing the listener in a sense of mystery and even danger. It's in that sweet spot. Again, the realm of myth. Neither safe nor dangerous, neither at home nor abroad. Every single theme feels like it belongs within your own heart.
Yeah. Wow. That's really well put. And actually, that contextualizes what I already thought about Zelda music. But now that you say that, I'm like, oh, that does make a lot of sense, because it's not boring. It's never boring, but it doesn't just feel like it's out there being, I don't know, unnecessarily avant-garde and challenging to listen to. It somehow is constantly inviting you along with just the right amount of surprise. And Steven, I interrupted you.
That's okay. I was just going to say there's no way I could have articulated that, but I do agree with it. And as you bounce around through Zelda history, some games will feel more safe and familiar, and other games will feel more alien and strange, but they all come from that same thread, I guess.
So here's something I like to say about the Zelda series, and this relates to the music. The games give the player the Triforce of Courage. He is the link to the player. And the music is part of that. So even take Twilight Princess, imagine the music when the twilight descends, you know, eerie, you know, it's creepy. Everything about the Twilight is creepy. If it happened in real life, everyone would be beyond terrified, you know. There'd be mass panic.
Yeah.
But in the game, it's exciting. You want to do it, you know, and the dungeons are like that. Like, you want to go into the Shadow Temple. I mean, that's really, that place is no different from somewhere in Dark Souls or Silent Hill or something like that. But the way that everything is framed is designed to make you feel courage and bravery.
Right. The games are, well, set up to make you want to go on the hero's journey.
Want to rise to the occasion.
Yeah.
And that's something that's reflected in almost all iterations of Link as a character, where he has that determined face, and he's all, whenever someone's like, "Are you ready, Link?" he hesitates and he grabs his sword, and then you're like, "Okay, we're gonna run in there.
Yeah.
This is gonna be scary and great."
Yeah. Now this is just a random tangent, but have you ever thought about what a Zelda game would look like if they were trying to build it based on one of the other Triforces? Like if they tried to make a game where you played a Zelda about wisdom, like what that would look like?
I've thought about this a lot. I'm
You're
guessing
asking
you guys
the right
have to. A Zelda game, like where you're actually Zelda wisdom based, I always kind of pictured her challenge would focus more on the internal to a degree. So there would still be, I mean, Link has to balance all three of the cardinal virtues. So would anyone who's born with the other Triforce pieces, but it would be framed differently. So there would still be adventure, there'd still be danger. But I think a lot of it would be more puzzle focused, for example, or Maybe there'd be more magic, more dialogue, more story, that kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah, that's kind of the train of thought I was thinking.
Yeah, whereas if you were somebody with the power piece, perhaps it would be a little more Spartan, It would be harsher. There'd be less dialogue. It would be much more physical.
Right. Yeah, I would love to see Nintendo try something like that, but it would change everything from the ground up for sure.
I'm thinking about Link's adventures, and there's combat, and there are towns where you meet lots of fun, interesting people. But to me, the core of the game is venturing into dungeons, and that's courage, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah,
I mean, that's something
like...
that I loved. That idea of adventure and, going out into the unknown. It's something that I loved so much personally about Breath of the Wild, is how much it took like that idea of exploration and going somewhere that's unknown and just figuring out what's there on a literally blank map. And it captured that in a way that I feel like tons and tons of games try to capture, but very few succeed at. And Breath of the Wild, I just never get tired of that feeling that it's able to capture.
Absolutely.
It's the childhood feeling of adventure that we felt just a little bit when playing Wind Waker.
Yeah.
But they made a whole game about it.
Yeah. I relate to that, actually. Wind Waker is perhaps the paragon of childhood adventure. Like, it's a child's idea of adventure. You can feel that in the bones of the story and the gameplay.
Absolutely. So with the music, were you trying to do the same thing you did with Link and try to kind of create a soundtrack that is like every Zelda soundtrack, or were you pulling from particular Zelda games?
It was more the former.
Yeah. There
were parts where I did deliberate references because I felt like it would just fit.
Right.
I think a lot of I don't mean to discredit or insult anybody, but I think a lot of fan fiction creators fail when they arbitrarily make references. They'll just add in a song where it makes no sense for that song to be there. Like the Hobbit movies, where they use the Ringwraith theme to represent the White Orc.
Right.
It was just
Right.
It was like no sense of connection to what the leitmotif was about, right? So in this, for example, I have themes that are from other games, but they're either generic or they're ones that are in multiple games, where there's kind of a cross-connection that is enhanced. Or if it's a deliberate reference, it's like very clearly fan servicey. So for example, with that scene where they're in Hyrule Castle in the flashback, I used the Minish Cap version of the Hyrule Castle theme, because it didn't matter which version I used. Right.
Is this the first time you've ever tried to write original music in the Zelda world?
No. So I probably had some of the music before I thought of the story, actually. Like a couple of the dungeon songs I'd written over 10 years ago.
This has been a long time in the making.
I guess so, yeah.
Yeah, that's
great. I've got original Final Fantasy and Dragon Quest music as well.
Nice.
Is there a Lamp of Destiny theme, or is it just disparate music for different locations and stuff?
Actually, there are a few leitmotifs that have come back a few times. People haven't commented on it, but I'm sure people have noticed here and there. And they'll continue to come back. And it will become more and more apparent. So there's one that goes... That's probably the main hook of the series.
Interesting.
And
when you're finished with the whole series, are you going to make like a suite of all of the original music and finish off with like an orchestral rendering of the main theme?
Actually, I'm already working on that. I have.
Okay, thank goodness.
Yes, I have a Bandcamp page where anyone can download the tracks on their own or all the ones at once that I have so far. It's free.
Nice.
but if they want to leave a donation, they can. It's not finished, obviously, but I want to say the overworld theme is sort of like what you're describing. It's an orchestral rendering of at least two of the main leitmotifs. Kind of like Twilight Princess, the different sections of the overworld were different leitmotifs.
So did you, like, this being your first audio drama, have you learned a lot or changed a lot of what you thought changed a lot of your plans based on the work you did, or is it pretty much what you expected so far?
I didn't go in with any expectations, but
Smart.
It's I didn't really even think about it. This whole thing has been so fun, and I'm just in hyper creative mode.
Yep.
I haven't really put much thought into this strategy.
Nice.
It seems like a very natural extension of what you were already doing.
I guess so. I think a lot of what I've learned is more on the social side of things, about like how to get people motivated and get them to send me their files more quickly.
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
We had a crash course in all that stuff.
Oh,
when
man.
we did our first full audio drama.
Especially in all volunteer projects, you don't want to just force people into strict deadlines when they're being kind enough to volunteer their time and talent. Yeah. But also, if they don't notice and they haven't sent a file in 2 weeks and that one file is holding the whole thing up, it's a different kind of problem.
Yeah. And that's happened a few times, although honestly, I'm one of the most important things is just setting realistic expectations and limits. And I said to myself, I'll do every 2 months. And that has been the sweet spot. It's short enough that they don't completely forget about you, but it's long enough so that, usually I'll tell people, can you get this to me by the end of 2 weeks from now? And then it'll end up being 2 months, and it's like the perfect amount of time.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Yes.
And I'm really, really, really grateful for the people I work with, because they've all been so positive and so helpful and so talented. There's obviously you two. We should talk about that at some point, your experience with this.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
And all the actors, especially Brooks, though, nobody is more enthusiastic about it than him,
I know.
I think.
Yeah.
He just, I saw recently his Twitter bio mentions it, and I was so touched.
Aww.
Also, Amber, the artist who does the pictures.
Yeah.
She has a lot on her plate. So it's very hard for her to get them out on time. But I keep trying to make it easier for her, saying, like, don't push yourself, you don't have to do anything complex, and then she just makes something complex anyway, and it always looks really good.
Yeah, that's working with a visual artist for you.
Yeah, her art is really fantastic. So yeah, now I can turn the interviewing lens on you, Stephen. How did you enjoy working as an audio editor on Lamp of Destiny?
Is the second part of the audio interview all going to be about me? Is that why I'm here? Am I part two? So, Rebecca, you sent me the episode 4 of the script that enters the Forest Temple months ago, and I really responded to it, especially certain scenes as Link and his companion were walking through the forest, because it reminded me of some audio work I had done for like a sort of stormy haunted island, and I had become so enamored with the soundscape of rustling bushes and babbling creeks and wind through the trees that I read that script and I'm like, I can already hear this coming alive. If you ever need someone to edit the scene, you should look me up. And then you looked me up, and it's just 100% up my alley. Like, it's just the kind of audio work that I enjoy doing. It's also one of the most challenging things I've ever edited before. So it was a pretty awesome experience for me. Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny because the script is actually split into its own acts. So we were kind of splitting out the work that way. And Steven, you did most of it, and you're like, okay, I've been working on this like all week. Bryan, can you do this one act?
Now that's not fair. Like, it was more like
long?
3
All month?
weeks.
Okay,
I'm very
slow. The most recent week where you were finishing it up.
I believe you, Steven.
And you were like, can you just do this one scene? And I'm like, all right, which one? And it was the boss battle.
Yeah.
I looked at it and I'm like, all right, this is like how many pages? I can do this. And it was an amazing crash course because I hadn't done this much intensive editing in a while. And I'm used to, like, when Steven and I write a script, we love to write like tons and tons and tons of character dialogue. And so there could just be like, you know, a whole scene might have someone like putting down a coffee cup and otherwise sitting there talking.
Yeah.
And I was looking at this and I'm like, 2 sentences go by and like 7 different things happen. And there's this bit in it where Link is just like getting completely flustered with everything, being like, how am I supposed to do all of this, princess? I don't get it. And that's sometimes how I felt looking at the script, where I'm like, how am I supposed to edit all of this? But I mean, I did it. I gave it a few days, and it was a really fun experience.
Too. That might be the best
The scene is stellar.
Yeah.
I was so happy with the scenes you both gave me.
It was a lot of fun to work on, but it was also like, okay, this needs to sound like a boss battle, and that means lots and lots of different layered sounds. But man, again, the voice actor for Link, Brooks, he sold it. Like, if I use any of his grunts or any of his yells, it makes the scene sound incredible because he's so genuinely into what he's saying.
Yeah.
And so anytime I wanted to make any moment just feel a little more impactful, I would find a voice clip from him and just sync it up with it, and it always worked.
It was very fun writing that dialogue, but
yes.
Dialogue's normally my favorite thing too, but of course, because it's a Zelda story, there has to be a lot of action.
And also, like, every component of this audio drama feels like you're living inside of a Zelda game, whether it's lighting torches to solve a puzzle, or, you know, shooting or firing Octorok blasts back at them with a shield. It's like it's all so authentic.
I'm glad you think so, because it was very hard having them explain what was happening in a way that was organic. Because it could very easily be, now I'm doing this, now I'm doing that.
Yes.
And that would be very awkward.
Yeah, that
absolutely. I think it is, once again, the lamp mechanic, if you will, which is basically Zelda's ability to communicate with Link and tell him what to do. That was really helpful because Zelda, it was in character for her, much like a character like Navi or someone from the games, to spell out specific instructions, like, you need to do this to the monster. And it didn't sound stilted because that's exactly what a character like that would say.
And Brooks sold it by responding like, do what? How? And just getting panicked. And so
he would bring the human element in.
Which is what the player is thinking. Like, I was playing Majora's Mask a few days ago, or maybe weeks ago at this point. I don't know how time works anymore, but I was getting hints from what's the fairy's name in that game? Tattle.
Tattle.
And
Yep.
I was like, what? Easy for you to say, Tattle. I'm getting pummeled. And I'm like, oh, wait, I'm channeling Brooks right now.
What am I, a gardener? Yeah.
Yeah.
It was really fun. I think that boss fight, really came together in terms of finding ways to, like, it was a nice combination between the sound effects and the voice acting and the writing it's a lot of stuff happening all at once, but like you said, you don't want every single action to be explained because that would quickly sound really bad. And I think it struck a really nice balance by the end. So
I was happy to hear them made by somebody else, just because I had all these rich visuals in my head of what I thought was happening in the scenes. I could see all the places, and then hearing somebody else put it together, I closed my eyes and listened, and new images came that weren't there before.
Yeah.
And that was a treat for me.
I'm really glad you like how it turned out. And you'll also, for listeners, you will also hear Rebecca's editing work in this episode too, because she did the final scene that we couldn't finish. So you'll hear all of us in episode 4.
Yeah, and I was happy with how seamless it was, actually.
Yeah,
I was worried that we'd be able to tell, but I played it to people and they had no idea who did what. So
very good.
Yeah, it all fit together really well by the end. So yeah, everyone definitely check out the 4 episodes that are out there so far. And so you said it's every other month that episodes are planned for?
I would like to start speeding it up. I don't know whether or not that will be possible. It'll depend on the people I work with, because they all have their own lives, right? So
I know the feeling.
Yeah.
Very cool. So on that pace, it should be done in about 2 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, believe me, I've taken way longer on projects that were way less ambitious.
Oh my god! Yeah.
I'm a very fast worker.
We're not.
So.
What would you say is the hardest part about trying to turn a turn a different medium, basically turn a game into a screenplay?
The one thing I already kind of covered was having characters describe what they see and have that sound natural. There are a couple points where I think I was on that uncanny valley, but I try really hard to either make the sound effects imply what's going on, or have it just work it into the script in a way that actually works. For example, somebody might warn Link, you will encounter such and such a thing. These are the qualities of the thing. So that in a way that would make sense, where you would actually need to warn someone.
Yeah.
Right.
You have a setup, so you've already planted the seed for whatever creature you're about to encounter.
Yeah, exactly. And same thing with character descriptions. I've seen the man wandering around in a ruddy cowl,
Yes.
That kind of thing. Where
because
you would actually naturally need to describe the way they look.
Did you ever consider, like, having Zelda be a narrator and, like, have prose?
I have the hurdy-gurdy man. He's going to do a little bit more prose later on.
Interesting.
Yeah,
that's cool.
He was the weird Sheikah guy that appeared in part 2.
Yeah.
So I'm not done with him yet. He'll appear here and there, and almost like a Happy Masked Man kind of character, sort of behind the curtain type character.
Yes. So how do you work in terms of the classic creative process question? How much do you have planned up beforehand, and how much do you kind of free write as you get to that part?
I have a lot of it planned. It being in a Zelda game, it has to have really rigid art. But once I'm actually writing the script, it's a skeleton is planned, but the flesh kind of comes naturally during the process.
Oh, I'm sorry. For a second, I literally thought you meant you had a skeleton planned in the plot.
I mean, I
do. Please, Stalfos is the proper term.
Yeah, it's impolite to call them skeletons.
Yeah. So I just realized that part of the audacity of this project is that you have to say how different things in the Zelda world are pronounced.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
that's
you're
the
right.
frustrating thing. I don't know if you guys saw the Facebook group, but I have a video with a pronunciation guide, so make sure everyone does it consistently. But there's already been a problem with Epona and Epina. Just let it slide.
Wait, can we do a mini game? Can we have a mini game in this Zelda episode?
Sure.
Oh, actually, that's coming in part.
Really?
Part 8.
Wow, she's got everything.
Oh my
planned.
gosh. I hope it's not
Yeah,
the mini
Alright.
game in Majora's Mask where you have to throw bombs into the baskets. That one's annoying.
No, that's stupid.
Yeah.
No.
Okay, thank
That's wildly dangerous. No, it's going to be probably an archery, hitting balloons.
Oh,
or
okay.
something.
Ooh, yeah, classic.
Yeah, I'll have a clown character. So.
Mm.
He'll be mostly improv.
Oh,
I like
wow.
tracks, holy cow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had opinions about them, but the mini game I wanted to do is I wanted to compare Zelda pronunciations real quick.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
Rebecca, how do you pronounce Link's, childhood friend from Ocarina of Time with the green hair?
Saria.
Saria. I always said Saria when I was growing up.
And some people say Saria.
Yeah.
And it
I
just
was-
depends. But there's different languages that have that name. It's actually a real name. And
Oh,
they're all
yeah.
different pronunciations.
That doesn't
so
surprise
that
me.
might have influenced. Yeah.
And are you an Epona or an Epona person?
I usually just go like Epona, like almost like an Epona.
Epona?
Let's
Yeah.
look at Epona.
I think
or like
yeah, that's
Epona.
pretty close to.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Epona.
Yeah. Any others, Steven? Any other pronunciation questions? How do you pronounce Link?
Do you go
I'm a
Deku?
Link kinda
Do you go
guy.
Deku, Deku, or Deku?
Deku.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, me too.
Deku's.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Deku.
Deku's definitely.
I think those are
best.
the main ones. I'm satisfied.
Yeah. Okay. Very cool. Well, I'll
Okay.
make sure to play some peppy minigame music behind
Thank
that.
you.
Wait, hang on. How do you pronounce the kingdom in which they live?
Hurley?
I mean, Hyrule.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with Hyrule.
How about Hitler?
Hyrule. Oh
Yeah.
man, we could. Yeah, don't hire me as a voice actor. I can butcher all of this.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Rebecca, for chatting. This was a delight.
Yeah,
Thank you, Stephen, for showing up.
thank you for inviting me.
You're welcome.
You guys are brothers. It's like, thank you for showing up.
Thank you for being there, like you always are.